How's it going, everyone? Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another astrological report. This is for June 2nd through June 8th of 2026. So this week, we don't have a ton of major aspects on the aspect list. However, there's a few things that are happening that I'll explain. And then also there's a couple dynamics in the background that aren't going to show up on this list because they won't be perfect until next week. But they're close enough already to be relevant this week and next week. And in next week's report, I'll talk again about it. But I will mention it in this week because, again, it's building up. One of those things is the fact that Uranus is moving into this T-square with the nodes of fate, which is quite rare and significant for the world. The world is at a fateful crossroads with the apex being Gemini and this new transit of Uranus and what it's stirring up in the world. That side is a little more unpredictable and chaotic. But the other thing going on in the background is the Venus-Jupiter conjunction building up. That'll be exact next week on June 9, but they're already close enough where, again, I think it's going to be relevant night by night. In fact, you can see it up in the night sky. Venus and Jupiter are getting closer and closer if you look to the west in the evening. Jupiter's up higher, and Venus is the brighter planet showing. So that's nice in your Cancerian area of life. So I'll be talking about those two events more in next week's report, but again, I have to mention it because it's still relevant this week, even though it's not on the list. What we do have on the list this week is the Sun in Gemini reaching 12 degrees on Tuesday, forming a sextile to Saturn, which has reached 12.5 degrees of Aries. So I'll talk about the meaning of that. We also have Mercury now in Cancer, also aligning with the nodes of fate. Mercury trine the north node and sextile the south node. That's exact on Wednesday. So that's fateful communications and information. Just more destiny is at play, shaping the future based on what's playing out. Right after that, on the same day, Mercury forms an exact square with Neptune. And that square is already building up until it's perfected on Wednesday. So I'll talk about the meaning of that in this video. And then Mercury also makes an inconjunction from Cancer to Pluto in Aquarius, really having to make some adjustments to what's going on out in the world. And that's the side of the chart where the moon is activating a lot. The moon this week is going to be waning all through the sign of Capricorn, all through Aquarius, and all through Pisces. So the moon will only make two conjunctions, one to Pluto in Aquarius, and that north node activating the T-square with Uranus this week, and then it's going to continue to be activated all through next week and most of June, in fact. So I'll be talking about the meaning of that. But other than that, again, as the moon, well, as we get to next Monday on June 8th, we reach the last quarter phase of this lunar cycle when the moon is in Pisces squaring the Sun in Gemini, which is the crisis in consciousness phase by next Monday. And also keep in mind that, all this Cancerian energy with the two best planets and now Mercury here, it is being ruled by the moon. And the moon is in detriment here through Capricorn. It's not the best place for circumstances. So again, it's not showing that everything is perfect down here or at its best of what it's talking about, that we might see more so next week with the Jupiter-Venus conjunction. And it's also in a place, the moon up here in Capricorn and Aquarius talks a lot about the world developments and politics and the group and the community going through a lot of extremism based on this Pluto in Aquarius, including protests. And that's part of also the local streets of Gemini that are a little more hectic and unpredictable and volatile with this aspect that will shape the world. In fact, the world is at a crossroads this next couple of weeks based on what's playing out. So what I'm trying to say is that since the moon is in charge of the circumstances for 2.5 days in each sign, and it's ruling everything in Cancer, it's going to be shifting every 2.5 days on what we're able to receive or how much care or support is available, and also depending on how it aligns with your personal chart. But regardless, wherever you have Cancer in your chart, there's still quite an abundant conjunction building up in that area. That's quite rare. It happens every 12 years. And other than that, the moon is just going to be making lunar aspects, which are quick. They don't last very long, all throughout the week in different ways that I'll be going through day by day in this video. So as always, check the description for all the aspects and the time stamps. And if you're one of the people that can't see the description box that some have said, it's probably based on your personal device and what you're watching this on. But I will also post the aspect list and the timestamps in the comments for you as well. All right, so with that said, I'm going to get started here for Tuesday on June 2nd. The moon has come into Capricorn overnight hours from Sagittarius, and now it's in a more serious position. And again, this is where the moon is considered debilitated. It's not as easy. So basically for the next 5 days, most of this week with the moon in Capricorn and Aquarius, it's being ruled by Saturn, entering new territory in this Aries transit. And that's going to bring up a challenge for this moon phase. But again, it makes things more serious. It puts more emphasis on government and world developments and work and goals and pressure that people could be feeling about what needs to be done. It generally is a time where when you are putting in the effort, when you work hard and focus on your responsibilities and your commitments, things can go easier. If you try to avoid your commitments and responsibilities and you're not as punctual or taking care of business during this phase, it's not as easy for the emotions and the feelings and the overall circumstances. So it requires maturity, and it's also about looking ahead. It's not just about instant results or instant gratification. It's also about slowing things down, doing things right, having a plan for what needs to be done. And the first aspect on Tuesday is the moon also aligned with the nodes of fate. So again, there's a lot of fate and destiny at play this week, shaping the world based on what's happening. And in this context, being in Capricorn, it has a lot to say about, the work environment, your career area of life versus yourself, your freedom, your independence. And that's part of the problem as the moon in Capricorn squares Aries every month. It's between what you want to do for yourself versus what you're committed to do and what you need to be doing that, again, are your personal responsibilities. So the moon is sextile the north node of destiny and trine down to the south node in Virgo. Now, right now, the nodes are at 3 degrees, but again, they're going to be moving into 2 degrees this week and next week. So if you have 2 degrees of the mutables, which is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, then you're wrapped up in a very rare, fateful transit, shaping your future and your destiny. And the moon here showing the circumstances are activating that for the first part of the day, but then even in a bigger way, for the next couple of weeks because of Uranus. You're also under a once-in-a-lifetime Uranus transit. If you do have a personal planet at 2 degrees of the mutable signs, which also shows the need for being flexible and adaptable and get ready for changes that life can throw at you. However, with the moon here trying that south node, it's still giving a great alignment for work and what needs to change, and that need to be flexible and adaptable with your work environment and your goals and what you would like to be achieving. But again, it can also be things that are outside of your control that happen, that changes things about work. But there's still an opening here to make changes in a way that's positive, to make improvements by really letting go of old patterns and old habits and restructuring work situations if you see the opportunity. It's also about health. What's going on with health? That's still this ongoing need for changes in health routines and patterns and diets. And then what affects health from behind the scenes, the Pisces area, which is being asked to be updated. And it's on the last stages of that for the next month or so. So the things that affect your health behind the scenes that not everybody sees, again, bad patterns and bad habits, there's an opportunity to really make improvements and work on those things, make positive changes that could affect the long-term future if you're willing to put in that effort here on Tuesday, and let's just say for the next couple weeks especially, and maybe for the next month as well. But at the same time, right after the moon makes that trine and sextile, it's also squaring Neptune on this world point of what's happening on the world stage. And it can also just generally show some people could be a little more confused or uncertain or questioning certain things here on Tuesday. This is going to be pretty early in the morning that it's happening, actually. This moon square Neptune is exact at 2:34 a.m. on the West Coast. So first thing in the morning, if you are up and about really early on the East Coast, and it'll be late morning into the afternoon if you're in Europe. So for a few hours there's also things that just aren't as clear, perhaps. Even if we think they are, we may be mistaken. So also be careful of how you're feeling about things. Don't get wrapped up into an illusion of some type. It will pass. It can also just show the need to kind of go with the flow a little bit here as well, and try not to, get too carried away with trying to have everything just right and perfected. It's like a balance that you have to try to find there of what going with the flow when you kind of see that that's necessary, and then also making positive changes by restructuring and looking at the details, but then also being open to expand into new possibilities. It's kind of all wrapped up in one. And things can get a little more sensitive as well. There could also be other like distortions or secrets. Like, for example, the moon in Capricorn is about work and career, and squaring Neptune about the self. People could call in sick even if they're not sick. They want to take the day off and kind of fib to the boss. Things like that could be at play first thing in the morning for some people. Not everybody, of course, but that's the background vibes. And then, and this is the contradiction, is that even though the moon is squaring Neptune on Tuesday, the sun is making that sextile to Saturn, which is more of a positive connection to authority and work and responsibilities, which usually shows that people can be in a better alignment with any kind of limitations that are going on. They can work with limitations better, work with structure and discipline better than usual. And again, that moon isn't going to stay in the square to Neptune very long, but at the same time, the moon is building up a square with Saturn all day long. And that will be a part of the energy as well in the background. So the sun sextile Saturn, but the moon waxing, or technically the moon is waning, but it's applying towards the square with Saturn. So the pressure could still be building up every hour of the day, as the day goes on, of where people feel like they need to be doing something. Again, their responsibilities, their commitments, their pressure in the background, some stress in the background, some difficult world developments could be in the background that are quite serious, that are taking place in government and on this world stage of what's shaping the world. But at least we have the sun making a sextile, so that shows that we can still put in some good focus and be somewhat responsible in how we're handling the emotional pressure that could be building up all day on Tuesday. And in between those squares, we also see that the moon makes a trine down to Mars. So there's always a combination of different aspects. And here we see that as the day goes on, and this is the afternoon to evening, when the moon does make that perfect trine from 11 degrees, it shows a better opening to take action, to be more motivated and driven. Plus, again, this is the same time period that the sun is making that more of a positive connection to Saturn. So again, being more reasonable and structured and disciplined and focused and dealing with any issues that are coming up in perhaps a better way than we otherwise would. So something opens up for positive results, positive action, and motivation to achieve and get things done in the evening hours. Some people, it'll be on Tuesday night. But it's like right after that moon trines Mars, it forms the perfect square with Saturn and the in conjunction to the sun. So just looking at the chart, you can see all these different aspects. It's a mixed bag all at the same time. A square, which shows the pressure, the stress, some blocks, some limitations are happening. And just, again, some people's own stress about their personal responsibilities. And yet there's an opening to be working on those things, to channel it into being productive in some way. And yet also how people are feeling is totally at odds with where the focus is of Gemini. Capricorn and Gemini, they're on two different pages. Gemini being an intellectual sign, a communicative sign, usually a little more youthful and playful and witty and clever and not getting too serious. And yet the moon in Capricorn is a more serious placement. Plus it's being ruled by a serious planet. So these green lines, the in conjunction and also known as the quincunx, it can show some irritation in the background, but it requires making adjustments. So these are mutable and cardinal placements, which is about needing to do something, start something, take action on something, and yet be very flexible and adaptable to the situation and don't be too stubborn or fixed in the overall outcome. So a little bit complicated there for the aspects on Tuesday. And that's the last aspect for Tuesday night, is the moon at odds with the sun. It can also affect the local environment, the streets where this Gemini placement is at, where the world is at a fateful crossroads for what's happening on the streets and through technology, communication. This could also show some sort of a government connection or a law government adjustment taking place too. The streets, riots, other kind of unpredictable activity out in the open. Neighborhoods could be going through some adjustments, in some cases. Again, transportation and traveling could go through some adjustments. Technology, as far as forms of communication and information, that Mercury will also be activating for the next 2 days after this. And Mercury's in charge of this Gemini that's going through some sort of an adjustment here. So things like that could be playing out perhaps on Tuesday. Moving this forward, we get to Wednesday on June 3, and the moon is halfway through Capricorn, beginning to build the opposition to this Venus and Jupiter, which in a way, again, can even show kind of a culmination point that's beginning this week that will last into next week about what this Venus-Jupiter is talking about in your Cancerian area of life, where there's an opportunity for more support or abundance for some people that's available there. But this is also an opposition between the outer world versus the inner world, generally speaking. And it all depends on your personal chart where you have Capricorn and Cancer. But these are the two signs that deal with safety and security issues. Capricorn being the material security of your work, and your money and what goes on in your outer life with work and career versus your home and family energy and your emotional needs and what you need to feel good and safe and secure on that inner level. So there's an opposition between both. And this moon is in charge of what goes on in your home. So there's also developments here, about looking at your future. What do you need to work on? What do you need to achieve this year to get you what you are really picking up strongly emotionally that you want and that you need, that you feel you need something to get through this time period? Or if you want something, a desire of some kind, this could really start to bring that out, this culmination energy, showing you what you really need to feel safe and secure and comfortable for the rest of this year or beyond. But it requires work in some way. It requires having a goal to get it and not just waiting for it to land in your lap. It's also, again, separating from that square to Saturn, which says self-responsibility, taking responsibility for your life and making things happen, starting things that you need to do for yourself and not expecting it instantly, putting in the effort and the time to get it and think about your next 35 years where this Neptune-Saturn is being rooted in your chart in Aries. Wherever you have Aries, that's a part of the new era that's being structured. Old systems, old structures are dissolving away in that area, and Saturn is asking to rebuild, restructure something new, again, for the long-term future that the moon is really picking up on, circumstances and the mood and the feelings of things here. But the moon is very far away. It's as far away as it can get to this really abundant Venus and Jupiter. So we also might be picking up on this desire of something that we want and need, but it's still not quite available in this moment, perhaps. A little bit of an opposition to the good stuff of life there in this moment. But this is also the day where Mercury, now in Cancer, is aligned with the nodes of fate. So whatever is happening on Wednesday, especially news and information, is aligned with fate and destiny for the future, and will have these ripple effects. And that's also even your own thought process, your own perception of things could be shaping your long-term future here, or anything that comes out, especially in regards to homes and families and property, real estate, anything like that going on is definitely aligned with the future. Now, there is a little bit of this red flag, and that is, even though things are shaping the long-term future here, the Mercury square Neptune could show that you have to be careful too of what you're hearing. Is it true? Is there deception going on? Is there illusions? Is there misunderstandings going on that's affecting the long-term future? However, the fact that Mercury's in a trine aspect to the North Node, I would say that even some misunderstandings that are possible, or illusions, or things that maybe aren't necessarily getting all the details in this moment, could still have a positive effect on the future, either directly or indirectly in some way. 1 second here. But this is also the background on Wednesday, as the moon is opposite Venus. And, you know, when the moon is debilitated, it just sometimes shows that people aren't always as comfortable as they would like to be. But this is also picking up on relationships in some matter. It could be family relationships. It could be working relationships with colleagues. There could be something that gets activated here. And this is where we have to be careful of what we're hearing and what we're saying to other people. There's always a chance with Mercury square Neptune of deception in the background here in some way. Now, it could also be on the world point with news and media that's happening on Wednesday, shaping the future. Be very careful of what you hear. Of course, that's a given. Usually you should always be careful of what the media says, but in this specific dynamic, definitely take what you hear with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean everything is false that you're hearing, you know, but that's the issue. We don't know what's true and what's not true necessarily in this moment. It can also just create a lot more sensitivity in the air for people. You know, the mood and the circumstances are in Capricorn, a little more tough, and, you know, the need to toughen up and not be overly sensitive here and deal with the reality of the world in your life and your responsibilities and all that. But Mercury is in Cancer now, much more of a sensitive perception for people. And it can also be more passive. It can also be more intuitive. And it's more feelings based on how people are communicating and perceiving things. And it's at odds with the self. But it's also at odds with the world in this moment and what's happening on the world stage. And we can see now that the nodes are about to shift into the second degree. So it's kind of forming this T-square, even though it's not perfect yet. It's in the background of this radical T-square for the world. So there could be things happening that are just kind of distorted in some way that are still quite radical, because Mercury's in charge of this Gemini at the apex of this T-square. And there's a distortion going on in some way. So just kind of keep that in mind in the background. And then the moon opposite Venus could show that People have a strong desire for something, and it may not be easy to get it in that moment. At the same time, the last aspect will be the moon opposite Jupiter. So things are big. There's a culmination here in government, in world, in your career, generally speaking, and around work and goals and ambitions. It's like we're starting to see what we really want here, what we really need, which can change dynamics in our focus and what we're driven to achieve after this, after we get past Wednesday. Again, that affects the long-term future with how we're thinking about things and perceiving things. But people can also be hypersensitive and misunderstand what you say and take things wrong and just be super sensitive. And yet there could also be conflict as a result, passive aggressiveness or just misunderstandings that lead to more turbulence and conflict with how people are communicating and perceiving reality. So it could be quite messy, actually, but also so fateful, whatever is happening. And then moon opposite Jupiter, the last aspect, which a lot of this is happening really early in the morning. So the last aspect of moon and Jupiter will be in the evening hours, right about there. And just look at the chart. You see a lot of red squares and oppositions here, which shows tension in the world, tension in the circumstances, and things could be over the top with what's happening, how people are feeling, how people are thinking, and kind of making a mess of things and distorting reality. So kind of step back before you react. We're still in the full moon, Sagittarius full moon, phase 2 of people's strong opinions about things and beliefs about things, real or not. All right, so that's Wednesday on June 3 here. And that moon is getting closer and closer to Pluto, which kind of amplifies things more and more, as it gets closer and closer to that. Intensifies the mood and the circumstances, which will be really at play when the moon is conjunct. So let's get to Thursday. On June 4, the moon starts off at the end of Capricorn, still being ruled by Saturn. And again, a mixed bag of aspects for Thursday. We start off with the square from the moon to Chiron. Chiron's coming into 29.5 degrees of Aries. So I talked about this last week. If you have 29 degrees on one of the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and then you're under this rare Chiron transit that's trying to show you where you need to work on yourself still. This can bring up vulnerabilities and sensitivities and insecurities and things that, make confidence a little weaker in this phase. And the moon, the circumstances and the mood is triggering that based on whatever is happening early morning hours on Thursday, right before the moon will change signs. And both of these positions at 29 degrees, this is critical. This is a sense of urgency and something about to change that's triggering a vulnerability or a sensitivity. So when things like this are happening in the world in the background, and you can look at the chart, it still looks difficult, which will show that most likely there can be some difficult situations happening in the world the first part of this week with all this, but at the same time shaping the future. And the moon will change signs right after that, first thing in the morning on the West Coast. Be late morning if you're on the East Coast. Moon ingress Aquarius for the next 2.5 days, but the moon again is still being ruled by Saturn in Aries. So do you have 12 degrees in your chart? It matters which sign, so don't just say, I have 12 degrees of whatever. It's if you have 12 degrees of Aries, 12 Cancer, 12 Libra, or 12 Capricorn, then you're under a rare Saturn transit. And that's the first pass of a 3-part process that will be back and forth until next year. So whatever's coming up, if you have that degree, you're going to be reflecting and reviewing and dealing with that issue the rest of 2026 and the first part of 2027. But it still changes the mood here from the more serious, grounded, practical Capricorn about work and business to Aquarius, where things get weird, things get different. People's emotional responses aren't always traditional or what you would expect. There's a little bit of more of an unpredictable dynamic, especially because that Uranus getting tighter and tighter to the T-square, but also intensified situations, intensified emotions that are unusual of how people are responding because it's Aquarius, but it's also Pluto. So Moon Pluto is also always emotionally intense, but yet Aquarius is not about generally going into emotional depth. Just because you have Aquarius and you can be sensitive or emotional, that's your own chart. You have a unique chart that's separate from what's going on up in the sky here. And generally, Aquarius on its own is about dumping out the emotions, which is about detaching from that deep emotional issue that people deal with. Aquarius needs freedom and space, and emotions don't want to get too smothered or crowded here. But yet, this is also the group, the friends, and the community that the circumstances are going to be moving through now, where Pluto is, which has been really intensifying what's going on in the world with politics and riots and protests and all that kind of stuff in the background. There's going to be probably another activation or an ongoing, but really intensified even more as the moon starts to reach Pluto here. That shows the dark side is within the community, the power struggles within the community going on. So that can be in the outer world, what's going on in the streets, along with this Uranus transit, but it can also be on individual levels with friends. The undercurrents between you and friends or you and your community in some way. There's a shadow. And then also Moon Pluto is notorious for trying to nurture oneself in destructive ways, especially if it's a hard aspect. It can be the conjunction as well. So you have to be careful. If things are too edgy or too intense, people try to take off the edge by doing something unhealthy or destructive. So you want to be on the more positive side of that and don't get sucked into the dark side of life and the underworld. And then it's also about circumstances are beginning to go through some sort of a transformation here in the world with the politics, with the science and technology, and I would say with protests and riot type of activity. But also people's emotional responses could just be extreme. And for some people, it can be extreme detachment. Other people, it can be extreme responses. There's just kind of a more unconventional kind of phase that we're going to be going through here for the next 2.5 days, starting on Thursday morning. And then the moon forms a trine to Uranus in Gemini, showing an outlet for even more unusual circumstances. But we can also work with that. We can deal with this intensity going on by being willing to innovate and create and step outside the box from what's normal and routine and try new things. But it can also show an opening for group and community to be radicalized with revolutionary vibes in the air, putting the world at a crossroads. And then we see the Mercury also picking up on that very strongly, which is both the moon and Pluto, because the moon will make the last aspect for Thursday will be the moon making that in conjunction as well. So it's like all day long, moon next to Pluto as Mercury, people's minds and thoughts and perceptions and what they're hearing and communication, really having to adjust to this, which causes mental irritation and mental adjustment to what and how people are thinking. Because generally, Mercury in Cancer is about thinking about safety and security, playing it safe, sidestepping issues, not going direct, and wrapped up in emotions and feelings. But this Mercury is also being ruled by the moon in Aquarius. So it's not your average emotional energy of how people are working with emotions and feelings. So there's a lot of adjustment here all day on Thursday based on what's going on in the outer world versus what's going on in the inner world and how people are feeling and thinking about things and communicating. So again, it can be adjustments and irritation, That's generally what that aspect means. To the power play, to the power issues, the power struggles within the friends or, again, the group and the community. But if you are also engaged in some sort of important communications or negotiations with somebody, real estate deals or just any form of communication on Thursday, just realize this background shadow dynamic of power plays and manipulation that's under the surface. And be careful of yourself getting wrapped up into that, but be mindful of those undercurrents that other people could be showing to you as well. But it feels like the intensity is going to be building up all day, as that moon will be applying towards Pluto all day long. And the moon is also in conjunct to the south node here. So there's also it's not really a finger of God because the sextile isn't very tight. But there's this adjustment taking place from Mercury to the circumstances in your Aquarius area of life, but also to Virgo, to this issue going on. And now the nodes of fate are at 2 degrees. So if you do have 2 degrees of one of the mutable signs, again, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, you're wrapped up in the nodes of fate and a once-in-a-lifetime Uranus transit all at the same time. And so circumstances could also show the need to really work on this Virgo area of your life about what needs to be purged and let go of and changed, restructured. So it can be about work that's going through some sort of an adjustment based on whatever's happening in the day that you have to kind of adjust to. It could be about health. This requires some sort of a health adjustment for some people. And on the world stage, again, there could be something about health here. Even this bigger dynamic the next couple of weeks of Uranus square Virgo, the node in Virgo, could also talk about world-changing developments about health, or even with news and information, that's affecting the long-term future about health for the world. But even on a personal level, again, I talk about this all the time, our own personal need to make adjustments to health routines and patterns for better health. And not just look at physical health, but look at emotional health, spiritual health, mental, psychological, all the hidden components of health that also need to be changed and updated, that will affect physical health in a better way. So again, a mixed bag of aspects there. And then the moon does reach Pluto by the afternoon hours into the evening of Thursday. So Moon Pluto, it's intense and transformative, and for the people that think that that's only on Tuesday, no, that's just a part of the astrology in this phase of life right now. So deal with it. That's what astrology is all about when it comes to Pluto. And the circumstances go over that point once a month, the most intense part of that, when the mood and the feelings and the circumstances are picking up on it very strongly here on Thursday evening, Thursday night, depending on where you live. And that's where the moon is also in conjunct to Mercury. How people are thinking and feeling are at odds with the mood and the circumstances here. So this could be, again, Thursday night into early morning Friday. There could be some really intense activity out in the community, in the streets, that's ongoing, that's escalated or going through a change from this point. But it could also be a turning point from what's been building up to this too, and the temporary. But it's at its most intense right there with the moon conjunct Pluto. So that's Thursday. Again, we still have this background of Venus and Jupiter. So check that out. Check out the western sky in the evening. It's a nice sight, actually. And look in your Cancerian area of life. Now, because the moon is ruling this Venus and Jupiter, the good side of the chart, and the moon is with Pluto, it can also intensify people's desires and their needs and the need for indulgences. And again, you have to be careful of nurturing yourself in destructive ways and unhealthy ways by having such strong desires and needs here this week and next week, and maybe even specifically here on Thursday night, depending on how it aligns with your chart. All right, so that's that. Let's move this forward and we get to Friday on June 5. Moon is starting to separate from that Pluto. It's still being rolled by Saturn, dealing with the more serious, intense side of life here, and the need to take self-responsibility and work on things for the long-term future. Still talking about science and technology and politics and the group and the friends and the community, carrying over from Thursday. However, we only get 3 aspects. 2 of them are easy. There's only one challenge for Friday, and that is the first aspect is the moon sextile Saturn. So now the circumstances in the mood is in a more comfortable alignment with authority and restriction and limitation and discipline and what needs to be done, so we can work with it better. First thing on Friday morning. And then there's a square right after that. The moon is square Mars, which amps up emotional intensity again and the need for action. So impulsiveness. Now these are fixed signs, so it can be the need to take action and do something in a responsible way, and yet it can also cause or show people are more stubborn in that they may not want to do it, and yet there's tension to do it. So there's a little more emotional agitation that's possible, and some conflict again with community and friends and the social political side of life. But that aspect is only for a few hours, and right after that square, that shows the need for action of some type. Friday morning, then the moon forms the trine with the sun, and that's usually a better part of the lunar cycle, where the lights are in harmony with each other. How people are feeling is in good alignment with what people are focused on. These are both air signs. It's more intellectual, it's more detached, it's more objective and communicative and social and outward. So things are flowing, but we still have this background that's you're seeing that's getting very, very strong and tight with Uranus squared the nodes of fate. It's still a crazy time in the world. There's unpredictable events that could pop off any day of the week for this whole month of June. That's already been building up in different types of ways. A variety of different unpredictable events is possible here because it's Gemini. It's also, again, connected to transportation, traveling events, education, communications, and media. That's shaping the world in some way here. But also, again, the local environment, the streets. There, for some people, and again, this is just generalized, but it can also talk about unpredictable events that could end up changing your life based on things that happen to your neighbors, to your siblings, to extended family. It even has a family connection because Mercury rules Uranus and Gemini, and it's in Cancer, generally about home and family and property. And so, again, there can be external things that surprise you coming up this month in June that changes something in your family dynamics. But again, that's just generalized, so it's not going to be every single person. You have to fine tune this based on your own birth chart and what Gemini is for you personally, what is Cancer for you personally, where are the nodes of fate right now in your chart. So I can't even tell you based on rising sign horoscopes. It's not good enough to generalize that either. It's like you have to kind of know, you have to learn, take the initiative and learn more and more about astrology. And I know a lot of my viewers do know a lot about astrology, but not everybody does. And if you don't, then if this triggers your curiosity, if you don't know some things that I'm talking about, then, take the initiative and learn more about it. If you're into astrology, there's probably a reason, because astrology tends to find people. But yeah, generally, it's kind of what I'm talking about here in the background. And it's not all bad. There's good things that can happen too from surprises and unpredictability. It doesn't always have to be negative. Now, there is a lot of intensity and kind of chaos and some craziness going on in the world. I won't lie. I have to be honest. Not everything is rosy and beautiful and easy every day either. And some weeks can have long stretches of difficulties, and months can be difficult. Some years can be more difficult, but it's always based on your own personal transits. Just because the world might be in a certain way that's somewhat chaotic, it doesn't mean every single person is going through a hard time in the world. It's really based on your personal transits and your progressions and other things in your own astrology that could be very positive. And I guarantee you, out of all the billions of people in the world, there's a lot of people that are going through new, exciting realities for this new era. And other people are struggling with this new era, these new realities, changes in their lives. So it all depends. And I can only generalize. So don't get all negative on me. Oh, this is such a bad negative report. It's always this way, blah, blah. It's like, don't get sucked in to everything being a downer. And, I'm going to say, even though some people don't want to believe it, and I try not to push it too hard because people do have a hard time understanding the bigger picture sometimes, but all these changes are actually leading to positive developments. It's just not instant. This is a big process that takes time of restructuring the world. And there's ripple effects. There's positive changes on the horizon. But there's also going to be years of challenge that come along with it. It's never just either positive or negative. Usually it's both. That's what life is. Ups and downs, light and dark. It's never just one or the other. The world will never just be 100% positive, and we'll find this golden age where there's never any issue. There's never any violence or war or death. There's always a combination. So I'm just saying, try not to get too down about things. This is all just a big adventure anyway. Life is short. Anyway, moving on here from Friday on June 5. Let's move this to Saturday this weekend. On June 6, the moon is at the end of Aquarius, first part of the day, and in conjunct to the Venus, Jupiter in Cancer. So again, the mood and the circumstances are having to adjust to people's strong desires and needs for indulgence and abundance and care and nurturing and support. It may not feel that way in this moment for some people on Saturday super early, but that's only a temporary aspect. And we do see there's a lot of different aspects here. The first two are in conjunctions from that moon to Venus, Jupiter. Then the moon makes a sextile to Chiron as the moon reaches the end of Aquarius. Another sense of urgency, another critical energy that says something's about to change here. And the mood and the feelings will change. And this is Saturday evening. So most of the day, the moon is in Aquarius on Saturday. Still talking about all the stuff that I talked about the last 2 days of the friends, the group, the community, the outward life, politics, and the streets, and science and technology, and all these things. But it's about to change. And we're about to enter something quite fateful when that moon reaches that north node in this T-square. And that will be the next thing that happens. So after the moon sextile Chiron, which offers a better feeling, a better mood too, where we are vulnerable or sensitive or insecure, about the self here. But then the mood changes into Pisces for the next 2.5 days. And that's a really big dramatic change from Aquarius to Pisces. Now there's a whole different ruler. Now that the moon is in Pisces, it's being ruled by this exalted Jupiter with Venus about to approach it. So now there's actually a possibility of feeling more and more of whatever this is talking about in your own chart. Now, again, I wish I could say that every single person is going to receive some support or new benefit or something financial or something good that feels like it's very supportive of you. But it really depends on your personal planets and if this aligns with anything in your chart. It might be in the background in a certain area of your life, wherever you have the sign Cancer, some better things can come about in that area. But as far as how personalized it is for you will be based on if you have any planets, especially if you have 25 to 26 degrees of Cancer in your chart. This is also now where Jupiter went retrograde last year. So Jupiter is about to leave its retrograde shadow and move into new territory now. So that's what I was saying last week. Like if you have 25 Cancer, it's Jupiter stopped there. But if you had like 25, 50 or almost 26, you never really got the Jupiter transit. So the last 5 degrees now get a Jupiter transit plus Venus, which you really didn't get the support that Jupiter offers. Now, Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So it's also about growth and expansion in your Cancerian area of life and whatever area that means for you personally. And now that the moon is in Pisces, there's better mood and circumstances that could start to align with that the next 2.5 days. But at first, it's not aligned with it just yet, but it does change the mood to be more sensitive, to be more inward. People could go into their own world, or again, their need for safety, security, and comfort and pleasure. Now it's more about the water again, feelings and emotions and sensitivities. And I tell people this all the time, every month when the moon is in Pisces, you got to guard yourself. You got to put up better boundaries because there's so much intuition here and sensitivity that it's very easy to pick up on the collective unconsciousness, to be influenced by the world, your environment, your surroundings. And if those things are unhealthy, then it's going to affect you in an unhealthy way. If you're surrounding yourself with something positive and healthy for yourself, then you can absorb that and feel it in a better way. So the veil between worlds are thin in this phase, which will also be the case at the end of August when there is an eclipse here in the same spot. But this is also fate and destiny. And again, the moon is about to trigger this T-square, this crazy aspect for the world that, crazy events can also pop up. There's a certain amount of unpredictability that comes along with this mood change and this circumstance that begins to change here. And that is the next aspect is the moon squaring Uranus with the nodes of fate right there, this big T-square. So it's a mutable T-square. That's messy. That's about being flexible and adaptable and changeable. So people's feelings can begin to change and the mood can begin to change. And the mood being behind the scenes or pulled into your own world, your own imagination, and things that pull you out of reality in some cases are at odds with what's going on in the outer world. Gemini, the local area, the streets. Or this can be one of the triggers for some of these unpredictable events with family that changes your life in some way for some people. Or other situations that are more unpredictable that could end up changing your life in some way. Now, it may not just be instantly right here on Saturday. For some people, it could be. But this, again, is going to be an ongoing dynamic for the next couple of weeks of this unpredictability and volatility and kind of a craziness in the air. It could also talk about crazy stuff coming out for media, news. This can be more unpredictable for travel and transportation events. So there is a mutual reception as well between the moon and Jupiter. Jupiter rules Pisces, the moon rules Cancer. So it's like, in some cases, it doesn't have to be completely bad or negative. There can be something surprising, and there's kind of a changeable mood that's volatile, but at the same time, maybe for some people, there can be some sort of a positive development here that you just weren't seeing coming, depending on your own chart. In other cases, it can be difficult or something happening that's not as easy. But whatever's happening, fate and destiny is definitely at play on Saturday and multiple times throughout the week. That's literally the last aspect for Saturday. This is exact on Saturday night. For some people, it'll be super late into the early morning hours of Sunday, but going off of my list here on the West Coast, it's Saturday night. So Saturday night, if you're, I would just say be aware of your surroundings if you're out on the streets or the town, because that's where the Gemini side of the chart is at the apex of some craziness here. But if you're aware of it, Just don't get too fixed. Don't get too stubborn. Don't try to have everything perfect your way, that, a perfect plan or something. Just be willing to be flexible and adaptable, and then you'll be right in alignment with the vibes. And it can be fun. It can be exciting. It can be something new for some people, again, because there is a connection here to this positive Venus-Jupiter in the background. It's just more private. That part is more inward and not as outward. All right, so that is Saturday, and then we get to Sunday on June 7. The moon passes that T-square, but it's the bigger T-square is still in place, like I said, because of it's not perfected until next week. So I think it's more of a trigger. It's triggering this aspect from this point forward. It's not just a one-day thing. All right, so then getting to Sunday, there's actually only two aspects, and they're both easy. The moon in Pisces makes a trine down to Mercury. This is where there is a better alignment between thoughts and feelings. But again, it's more intuitive, it's sensitive, it's inward and private, and more about body language than verbal language, and just people's feelings of things. It's more in alignment. Their mood is more in alignment with their perceptions and how they're thinking about stuff. All right, and then the moon is sextile Mars as the day goes on. That will be the only other aspect for Sunday, and this is going to be Sunday evening and Sunday night, where moon Mars sextile, we're more comfortable with the action, the physicality, and how we feel about, any kind of, it's not usually as agitated. We can work with taking action in a better way. It's just more private from behind the scenes. So that's that, really just those two aspects for Sunday. So a lot of it is just about that Pisces and the Cancerian side of your life that are flowing. And that flow will get stronger because eventually that moon will trine Venus and Jupiter by Monday. So there's a lot of this pull to, again, your own world, your own reality, imagination, creativity, indulgences, home, family, inward life. Even though there is that one aspect that allows, for physical action as well throughout the day on Sunday, especially Sunday evening and Sunday night. And then we do get to Monday on June 8. But this is also the first aspect for Monday morning. Early morning is the last quarter moon phase, the moon square the sun. So this is where, usually this is the challenge, one of the challenging parts of the lunar cycle. The lights are on two different pages. The last quarter square is the crisis in consciousness, where we have to integrate, we have to work things out, and kind of, usually there can be some emotional challenges or circumstances could feel challenged. First thing in the morning, though, and because this is happening so early, it's not going to be the entire day. Things won't be challenging the entire day because, again, eventually the other two aspects for the day is the moon aligning with Venus and Jupiter. So it's just really early. So if you're in Europe, you're really picking up on this first thing in the morning. Even in, the East Coast, it's bright and early. But for people on the West Coast, it's like, 3, 4 a.m. So there can be some disruptions with sleep or other things going on in the environment. And it's about a conflict between the mind and the intuition, the feelings of things versus the logic, the details, the practicality. They're on two different pages. But it's also a mutable square. It can be messy. It can be hard to work with. Things are scattered. Things are changeable. We have to fumble or figure something out, or again, integrate things that have been going on and kind of like process it mentally, consciously, and intuitively. It's like how, again, people picking up on things versus what's going on in the local area, the streets, the communications, the media. People aren't comfortable with what they're focused on. Super early there. But then we get this better alignment as the moon all day is passing that last quarter with the sun, and eventually forms that trine with Venus and Jupiter by Monday after, let's say Monday evening, Monday night for most people. There is something here. Now that alignment only lasts for a few hours on Monday evening, Monday night, but it's kind of triggering this better, bigger dynamic of Venus-Jupiter, which becomes exact the following day on next Tuesday's report. So they're already right there, so close. So again, look up in the sky and you're going to see them at their closest point by Tuesday. And they're super close here on Monday. And the mood and the feelings are aligned with that. So there's just a better opportunity to feel more supported, more comfortable, indulging in whatever this is for you in your own personal area of the chart of Cancer. And again, Jupiter's ready to enter new territory finally, where it hasn't been able to do that since last November. It got all the way up to this point last November of 2025 and then stopped and went backwards. So now the end of Cancer, the last 5 degrees of Cancer, can finally get something that they weren't able to get last year from this Jupiter. And it's even more, there's even a bigger reward for some people that have the last 5 degrees of Cancer because Venus is with it. Last year, Jupiter was by itself. It didn't have Venus in the same degree. So there's this opening for people, and that will lead to a mood change by next Tuesday because next week's report, the moon will be in Aries. And going through this section of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. But we will get these 2 major aspects in next week's report, the Uranus T-square, the nodes of fate, and this Venus-Jupiter conjunction. Again, if you have the earth and the water signs, 25, 26 degrees, you're most likely to receive some sort of benefit from this. And then wherever you do have Cancer in your chart, it's still a better area right now. Regardless if you don't have any planets in Cancer or not, in the later degrees, whatever area that is, there is something that's easier in that section right now. However, you might have 25, 26 degrees of Libra, and it's squaring your Libra, or opposing your Capricorn, or squaring your Aries, or in conjunct to your Sagittarius. And, it's like, it all depends on what you personally have going on will determine this. And I'll talk more about this next week because I'll have to, because it'll be on the aspect list. And then we still have this world dynamic going on that there's a craziness. I mean, just there's no way around it. The news, the information, all the things that are coming out and just all the things that are mentally chaotic in the world. It's shaping the long-term future, and it's kind of a wild card. Now, again, there can still be exciting things for some people that shape their destiny in a positive way. And then for other people, there can be negative things that come out for the June timeframe. But if you thought June was crazy, just wait till July when this Mars reaches Uranus around the 4th of July. I would say the 4th of July in the U.S. is going to be super crazy. And just the first week of July is going to have like this acceleration of craziness and destiny and new developments in the world. And we're really going to see a lot about what this Uranus is speaking about once Mars gets there by July. So there's like a mixed bag. There's ups and downs for June here. And again, this is still a very positive conjunction coming up here with Venus and Jupiter. Then we'll get the Jupiter in Leo opposite Pluto with the full moon in Aquarius. That's going to be a wild full moon in Aquarius with Pluto and the Sun and Jupiter conjunct opposite. That's going to be some big world turning points and developments that are pretty dramatic. But it doesn't have to be all negative. These are different types of events that will be playing out this summer that we've never seen. So that's what I got for you here. Yeah. Hope it's helpful. Thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up if you like my videos. I appreciate it. Take good care.